Hello and welcome to my OnlyFans page. Don't forget to hit the donate button, like and subscribe, and share with your friends. And wait, wrong account. I mean, hi. No, just kidding. But yeah. Hello and welcome to the Chris Amore channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell, because sometimes YouTube will unsubscribe people automatically who don't do so. I don't know why they do it, but sometimes they do. So make sure you hit the notification bell, like and subscribe, and share with your friends, because we're trying to reach people. So one of the things I wanted to start doing was going through some of the books that I've spoken about, and maybe try to digest them a little bit more, go through them maybe chapter by chapter, or just summarize various parts of them, because I talk a little bit about some of these books, but it's very vague. And I was listening to the earlier episodes, and I didn't really get into very much detail about many of them. And so one of the books that I'd like to get into is one of the first ones I was talking about in the first episode, called Songs of a Dead Dreamer and Grimscribe by Thomas Ligotti. Something that'll scare the shit out of you. And I'd like to take a couple of the stories and kind of break them down a little bit for you, and maybe explore some of the themes that go throughout all of his stories, because they all seem to amount to a certain type of vibe and a certain kind of, there's a certain flavor to Thomas Ligotti's work, and maybe we can go through some of that together. So one of the stories from Songs of a Dead Dreamer, it's actually in 3 parts. It's not the first story, but it's towards the beginning of the book. And this one's called the Nyctalops Trilogy, or the Nyctalops Trilogy. I've never actually heard that word before, so I don't really know how to pronounce it. But it's in 3 parts, and just the word, Nyctalops, Nyctalops, kind of makes me think of something that's dead, and maybe like a cyclops or something, maybe some kind of a horrendous monstrosity that has to do with death. And there's a little bit of an alchemy vibe that goes through at least the first part of the story, as the narrator, which he is speaking from, you're only hearing one side of a conversation. Throughout the entire first part of the story, you're hearing basically a monologue from one man as he deals with a couple of different people, mainly a woman who's a prostitute that he meets in a bar, and eventually a police officer. But you're only hearing his side of, what would be a dialogue. So you're hearing the monologue side of the dialogue. And it's interesting because it made me think of the Stephen King story, Dolores Claiborne, which was written in the same format. I didn't actually finish reading Dolores Claiborne. I think I started it around the time that the book came out, shortly after I had graduated high school. Dolores Claiborne had come out, and I didn't find the story very interesting. But the one thing that really caught my attention was that the story was from one side of a conversation, an interview, but you're not hearing the other person speak. And so the first part of this Nyctalops trilogy is the same way. The first part is called The Chymist, Chymist. And so, again, there's a little bit of your alchemical flavor that's going into the story. So, as I said, The Chymist begins with a man in the bar. He's talking to a hooker. Her name derives from Rose, and we don't actually know what the name is, but it starts with Rose, or has Rose in the name. And the reason that we don't know her actual name is because every time he addresses her, he calls her a different name that is derived from the word Rose. And he makes a very early reference to alchemy when he compares her name to Rosicrucianism. And the guy is very cocky and condescending, and he's a rich guy, and he seems very particular, like he has OCD or something. He tells her to spit her gum out, and asks her not to belch when she, orders her beer, and seems to express a bit of concern about whether she swallows the gum and it mixes with the beer, because he tells her that she needs to have a clean vessel. And so, again, back to the alchemy thing, the body being a vessel. He seems to express this concern about what's going into her body, because it's almost as if he wants her a certain way. Well, because she's a prostitute and he's about to take her out of the bar and presumably take her home or take her somewhere. And then he condescendingly explains different types of vessels, and he's kind of trolling her a little bit, basically just trying to make her feel stupid. Go figure. So the guy's going into conversation with her, and I presume he's doing most of the talking, although you wouldn't know it because you can't hear her side of it, although from time to time you hear him answering her. But he's mainly answering just like glances and gestures from her, like he's taking some social cues and responding to those. So I get the impression that he's not really letting her talk very much. He gleefully feigns sophistication, going into detail about his drink preferences, and talks about wine tasting and sort of waxes philosophical about alchemy, with a hooker. All right, so he introduces the concept of diversion and diversity, and not diversity probably in the sense that you're used to hearing it lately in the media, but more like fluctuations from the norm. He quotes, "You can't step into the same river twice." He makes a joke that he may be some sort of a vampire, but then sort of shrugs it off and denies it, and reminds her that he's this professional. I guess at this point, he informs her that he works for a pharmaceutical company and he's some sort of a chemist. And he also keeps, at this point, for the first time, draws attention to his briefcase that he seems to be sort of protecting, that's under the table. And somehow it makes him important. He comments that, oh, don't worry about that. I would never, leave it unattended, in a neighborhood such as this. At this point in the monologue, he begins to mock the neighborhood as being something sort of below him. But he lets her know that he's familiar with the neighborhood, and it's almost like he's done this before. He's been in this neighborhood many times. Refers to the town as like a corpse, and touts himself as an expert on death. He makes reference to a local ballroom, mentions the Great Gatsby, and describes a scene very much like the Colorado Lounge in The Shining, where the dead kind of come back to dance. It's like a ballroom of ghosts. And he speaks of other local lowbrow attractions. He refers to one like the establishment from part 3 of part 3 of this sort of triptych of stories, and I still haven't figured out yet whether or not he's the main character in all 3 of them. There is a man as the main character of all 3 who's a little bit creepy, but I'm kind of assuming it's him through all 3 of them it's him in different guises, and this is the only story where it's like only coming from his side of the conversation. The other stories are formatted differently. And then he talks about a local shop for repairing mannequins, which is another theme that comes up in other stories in this book, in the Songs of a Dead Dreamer book. At this point in time, we will take a small interlude to deliver some messages from our sponsors.
Hot damn, I just ate the best damn spaghetti I ever had in my whole life.
I'm very proud to announce the launch of my own brand of spaghetti, Amore per favore, spaghetti and sauce. I lived in Italy when I was a kid, and I ate some of the best spaghetti you'll ever get in your life. And I knew how to do it right because it's in my blood. I've got spaghetti in my blood.
Now don't forget to get yourself some Amore per favore spaghetti at your earliest convenience, because I promise you won't regret it.
The truth is, we don't have any sponsors yet, so make sure that you like and subscribe and share with your friends so that we can reach a broader audience, so that we can bring you some sponsors. Make sure you go and visit deeptank.net for all your deep tank needs. We've got an online store featuring our album, our debut album, Has to Be Done. And we've got a plethora of t-shirts, hoodies, baby shirts, onesies, and sweatshirts and tank tops there, which you can peruse to your heart's delight. This one right here is one of the many designs you can get from our online store. And then you can order them right there online. Excuse me. You can order them right there online from our online store. Again, deeptank.net. Check it out. Back to our story, the Nyctalops Trilogy, Part 1, The Chymist. At this point in the story, our hero and his prostitute friend agree to go back to her apartment. And on their way out to the car, he sees a cop standing by his car, checking out his car. And he kind of like tells her, like, he's like, don't swear. So, like, for some reason, he's getting ready to take this hooker back to her apartment and bang her out. And he's telling her to watch her mouth. So anyway, so he goes over to the car. He encounters the police officer, and the cop asks him for his license and registration. And he willingly hands it over. He starts kind of trying to make small talk with the cop. And for some reason, he tells the cop he's a stockbroker and that he can help him out with his investment portfolio. And so he recommends the company that he actually works for, that he really works for, as a stock option. And so he just kind of bullshits with the cop a little bit, and then the cop leaves, satisfied or whatever. But the cop's kind of like eyeing the girl like he probably knows who she is. And so they wait for the cop to leave, and then they get in the car and head to her place. So they get in the car, and he gloats over how smoothly he dealt with the police officer to her, like he's all proud of it. And then he reminds her that he received a bachelor's degree when he was 12 years old. So when he was talking to the cop, he spoke of a breakthrough drug that this drug company was going to come out with, and that was why he should, invest in this company. And he brings it up again to the prostitute and tells her it's her lucky night. So one might start to wonder what he's got in his briefcase, right? Okay. So then he sees a beer advertisement and again makes an alchemy reference about transmuting base ingredients into gold, which made me think of Rumpelstiltskin. I was thinking she can spin straw into gold. And it kind of made me wonder, was Rumpelstiltskin an alchemist? And did the peasant father try to pass off his daughter as an alchemist as he was trying to marry her off to a rich man? I don't know. I digress. Another theme which creeps into all of Thomas Ligotti's stories is this sort of illustration of this kind of industrial slum, almost as if it's some kind of a paradise, like it's like the slum and the scum on the street and the rats are beautiful. And so he's kind of like, this is all coming up in conversation that he's having with her in the car. He just won't shut the hell up. He likes to talk. He's one of those guys that probably loves the sound of his own voice, right? So then back to no two times are the same, no two lives are alike. He starts getting philosophical again. So while they're in the car, he starts psychoanalyzing her a bit, asking whether the chthonic elements of the slum speak to her and possibly gave rise to her particular career choice, and how this dark world is in flux, and how it's all the product of alchemy, but sort of a reverse alchemy, as the glamour of old wears a new mask of rot, and how everything beautiful diverts into chaos. He speaks of an epiphany he had in college as his own personal chemistry changed, which transfigured his outlook from then on out. It's then that they arrive at her apartments. When they get out, he tells her not to slam her car door and grabs up his briefcase. He comments that everyone likes to believe that they're in possession of some secret knowledge. He suggests there may be drugs in his briefcase. She lives on the 22nd floor, which made me think of 22 Acacia Avenue, where Charlotte the Harlot lives. He tells her not to smoke in the elevator. He makes a few comments and points out that he's right most of the time, and that her apartment is a different place every time she comes back to it, especially now, since he happens to be there with her. He informs her that he was once a teacher, and he tells her to keep the lights low, and the city is different every night. The city is also a vessel, which takes the shape of its contents. The streets are the skeleton of the city, the skeleton of a dream, ready to shift its structure and support a new shape. And the great chemists must be careful not to awake while they dream. He tells her she's with him to extend his imagination. He calls her a willing vessel for the drugs in his briefcase. He pulls out a vial and sprinkles some dope into the palm of her hand, where it absorbs into her skin, and she ingests it on the spot immediately. He tells her the drug is already at work inside of her, and just stay seated. Don't try to fight it. She can no longer move and has become a vessel for his imagination. In essence, he is dreaming her. She no longer possesses personal volition and is now a slave to his every whim. Whichever form he wants her to take, she will. They are as tightly bonded as two people can be. Her body reacts to his mind. This new drug he has concocted, still not perfect. Her original structure has broken down, and she'll never be the same as she was before. See, this part here made me think of Clive Barker's The Great and Secret Show, when Jaffe and Fletcher both ingested the Nuncio, which was basically a drug that they had developed that would sort of hyper-evolve them into these godlike beings. And that's what this part made me think of. And she will remain in whatever incarnation she's taken on at the dream's end, which should shock the poor individual who ends up finding her. He reassures her she'll be dead by then, but not before experiencing a godlike ecstasy. At that point, he's ready to surrender to the whims of his imagination, taking them both on their inevitable and her final tempest of transfiguration. And off they go. Well, that's the end of my summary of the first part of the Nyctalops Trilogy, entitled The Chymist. I'll probably summarize at least the second one in another video. The third one, honestly, I wasn't too crazy about. I thought it was a little bit silly. But the second one I actually like more than this one. The second one creeped me the fuck out, to be honest. Some of this guy's stuff is pretty unsettling. That one wasn't too bad. There's a couple other ones in here that are kind of keep you up at night when you least expect it. I think it'd be interesting to do this with certain chapters of other books, because this is a short story. It's only about 6 pages long. But I'd like to go through some of the Dostoevsky stuff and take that stuff and summarize it. Maybe not in so much detail. That one had a lot of detail. But these short stories, they're a little bit compact. And so, this one's a little bit different. I was having some fun with some of this stuff. It was fun for me. Was it as fun for you as it was for me? I hope so, because I want to keep doing this. And I'll probably do it a little bit different every time. So, that about sums it up for episode 3 of the Chris Amore Show. It's an interesting little experiment, and I want to get back in the swing of just talking about stuff and working out ideas and just putting some stuff down, just kind of seeing where my mind wanders, a little stream of unconsciousness. I watched the 2 first episodes and some of it's a little bit tarded, but it's going to get better. We'd like to thank you for joining us today. I enjoyed our little time together. Make sure that you like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we will see you soon. Goodbye.